So I want to set this up, and I want to set it up as today is a skeleton. Okay. Today is the framework to having your best year ever. All right. And what I mean by it's the skeleton is I'm not going to go into every topic in super detail. And so I'm gonna, I'm gonna give you the outline. It's kind of gonna be a checklist, if you will, of how to set up your year. Okay, how to actually set up your year, which you can do in advance so that you can run an intentional business and get done what needs to be gotten done. Um, some of you are very familiar with my stuff. Some of you are not familiar at all. So I just wanted to give you guys some free resources. So when I talk about your weekly strategy, the pillar system, planning your week, planning your day, all that kind of stuff, you can go even deeper on each topic. And so the first one, my website, if you don't already have a copy of my book, that goes through the whole pillar system and a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about. I know most of you are on my email list. You can sign up there. I also have a podcast that a lot of people don't know about, but you can link to it through the website, where I actually help people in real time create their weekly strategies, figure out what their pillars are. Obviously, you can email me. Any questions you have, talk to me about coaching if that's something of interest, but you don't have to. You can just email me straight questions. And then also, I have an online course that goes through everything I'm going to talk about here. It's actually not even something I sell. It's not a product. It's something I just give to my clients so that, they can do some of the work on their own between sessions and things like that. So I'm actually at the end of this call, which I didn't do yesterday. Don't tell anyone, but I'm going to give you guys actually access to the online course for 45 days, and you can use it or not use it. So I'll have a link at the end that I'll be sharing in the chat. And again, this isn't anything. If someone's listening to this recorded or anything, I don't have this. It's not a product or anything. It's just something that I use with my clients right now. Okay, so those are the resources that be available to you. That way, I can kind of do everything in a checklist format. Big picture. Let's talk big picture here. Okay. And those of you who've been through my pillar training know this very first slide. It's going to get very different after this, though. And that is, I want you to set it up so that you can go from running a reactive business to an intentional business. Okay. And the difference in a reactive business, you're reactive all day. It's right in there in the words. Your days kind of own you. This is the language that you kind of say to yourself. You're on this emotional roller coaster where when something good happens, you're excited. If something good doesn't happen, you feel like it's really hard. There's a lot of wasted effort. Okay. There's very little ROI on your action in a reactive business. And the analogy I like to use is it's like putting a heater in the snow. Okay. There's nothing wrong with the heat or the energy. It's just that most of it winds up getting wasted. It just dissipates, right? It doesn't go anywhere. So when you put out that effort, you will know you've hit the cap of a reactive business when running faster actually doesn't do much for you. Okay. No matter how much more you do, how much quicker you go, nothing seems to change. And ultimately, your income is capped. And that's the problem in a reactive business, right? Look, you can grind your way to a certain level of success with your work ethic and your skills, but you're always going to be capped with a reactive business. Now, with an intentional business, you have a lot more clarity, okay, hour to hour, day to day clarity on exactly what you should be doing. Okay, you have this repeatable process. And most importantly, when you put out effort, okay, because it's intentional, you get a much bigger ROI on that effort. And you get this thing we call the Friday night feeling, meaning, on Friday night, regardless of that week's results, right? Whether it's sales or new clients or whatever it happens to be in your industry, you know on Friday night that you had a great week. Okay. You know you had a great week because you hit your pillars, as you're going to see here in a little bit. A lot less stress and overwhelm. Okay. Look, stress and overwhelm don't happen when you have too much to do. They happen when you don't have clarity, right? About what has to be done next and then what has to be done next. And then finally, you're going to earn more by focusing on less. And I'll be honest, this is something that, for the first probably 10, 12 years of my entrepreneurial career, whatever it is, that I never bought into, right? And now I'm an absolute, I can't say it enough, that you will produce or earn more by focusing on less. And that's what an intentional business is. Now, how do you go from a reactive to an intentional business? Well, the quickest way to get there is by creating an actual strategy, right? A predetermined plan on where to focus your effort and skill. But there's also something else you need beside this strategy, and that is you need a system so you can actually execute on that strategy consistently. Because if you don't execute on even if it's the right strategy and you don't execute on it consistently, it's not going to matter. Okay. So here's the checklist. All right. This is the checklist that we're going to go through today. Everything on this checklist, all 7 things, these are things that you can do prior to the new year. Okay. These are things you can do. And so I'm going to walk through these one by one today. That's the framework I'm going to give you for your intentional business to have the best year ever. Number one, we'll talk about determining your goals. The second thing you'll do is you'll create your weekly strategy. The third thing is you'll create your reference documents. Then you'll create your weekly plan template. Then you'll create your daily plan template. You're going to mold your calendar. And then the last thing is you're going to make a decision on what you should be monitoring. Okay. So that's kind of the framework, things that you can put together to have your best year ever, to have these to run an intentional business. So if we start with goals, and quite frankly, I think goals are overrated. Okay. It's just shown to be the case over and over and over. Now, I want to be clear. I have goals and I'm a fan of goals, but they're overrated in terms of your goals don't determine how successful you are, right? All your goals determine is where you're trying to get to. They give you direction, which should educate your decision-making, right? That's what drives your decision-making. So you do need to know where you're trying to get to before you start creating a strategy. But this great saying, and this is an old saying that's been rehashed 38 times, that you do not rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Okay. Meaning I'll take the person all day who has a consistent process, has the right strategy and hits it consistently, than the person who just gets excited and puts all sorts of stuff on their mirror and looks at it every day and repeats the mantra 9 times. Right. And so again, goals important. The book talks about them. There's a module in the online course that talks about both directional and short-term goals. But to me, they're not overly important to the success. They're a critical part, but they're not everything. Okay. The next thing you need to do is you need to create your weekly strategy. And I want to show you what I mean by strategy. Okay. How important it is. I talked about your strategy being a predetermined plan for where you focus your skills and your work ethic. And the best analogy that I've ever come up with to explain this is to talk about flies, right? I think we can all agree that flies are pretty good at flying. In fact, we literally named them the fly, right? They're fast, they're strong, they're quick, they're agile in the air. So why does one fly wind up dead on the windowsill and another fly zip right out the door, right? They're both really good at what they do. It's just that one pointed their skills and effort in the wrong direction. And that leads me to conclude that being good at something is different than being successful. So I know we have a few financial advisors on this call. Just use them as an example. Being a good financial advisor to your client is different than having a successful practice. Okay. They're not completely separated, but they are different. All right. So why weekly, right? Why do I always talk about a weekly strategy? Look, the reality is this: a daily strategy, almost impossible to keep up, right? Especially if days are different, right? Days can get away from you. Sometimes you're traveling, sometimes you're in the office, sometimes you're out. There's so many factors that make doing the same thing every day consistently extremely tough. Now, again, I'm not saying I'm against routine. I'm a huge fan of morning routines and different things like that. But I don't want to make your business dependent on you doing the same things every day. Now, if we go out the other way to monthly, okay, the problem with a monthly strategy of, okay, here's the 9 things I have to do every month. And if I do these, right, everything else takes care of itself, is that a month is such a long time that it gives you the ability, number one, to procrastinate, right? Because it looks like you have the whole month to do it. And then number two, as the month gets to an end and you realize you're not going to hit those numbers or you're not going to do those things, you can creatively justify why you didn't do it. And I'll start up again next month, right? So I just think weekly is a great unit of accountability. I think that's the best way I can put it. All right. So I do everything weekly. I encourage you to do everything weekly. And so the way I like to help you create a weekly strategy, and most of you who are on this have probably heard of this at some level if you're on my email list and things like that, is I like to use the pillar system, right? Which is what the book is about, which is what the online course will take you through. And what the weekly strategy is, the pillar system is, we're going to take every activity that you could be doing with your time. We're going to run it through a series of criteria and questions and things like that. And what's going to come out the other end is a list of these weekly pillars, right? These activities that you control. That's the key, that you control. All right. That as long as you execute on these 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many pillars you have, you'll know again on Friday night that you had a great week, that it's just a matter of time and pressure until you hit your goals. Okay. So again, we're not going to spend any more time here, but the book and the online course and the podcast goes through the process of figuring out what your weekly strategy is. Okay. So you've got your goals. Second thing you do is you create your weekly strategy to hit those goals. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to create reference documents for your pillars. All right. And don't worry about, like, this is just an example. It's a screenshot. Nothing on here applies to anything. I'm just giving you an example of a reference document that I've used. Okay. Now, what a reference document is, there are certain pillars where the last thing in the world you want to do is just start from scratch every week. Like, okay, I now need to hit this pillar. I need to spend, 30 minutes, whatever, creating content, or 60 minutes, working on effective messaging, whatever it happens to be, right? Whatever that pillar happens to be. And so what I don't want you to do is starting from a standstill, from just doing what you feel like doing in the moment, right? Or whatever the last thing you heard. And so a reference document is something where you can open it up, or it could be a piece of paper, it could be written, it could be a Word document, it could be Excel, where you use that to help complete your pillar. So for example, this is, if you notice what the tab says, it's content ideas. And when I took this screenshot, I had an old pillar, it's not around anymore, but of creating content, right? For certain things. I had to create a certain number of posts every week. And so what this was I had different ideas, examples, right? Resources where I could get information, right? Reminders, all that kind of stuff. So when I went to create my content to put on, whether it was Facebook or LinkedIn or email lists or whatever it was, I could reference this, and this would kind of get my brain going. So this can have a to-do list on it. It can have a list of ideas on it. It can have resources. You can make it whatever you want, but you should have reference documents for those kind of pillars. And it's certainly something we can talk about in the Q&A. Okay. The next thing, your weekly plan template. Now, this is different. I know there's overlap here, so I want to be careful. This is different than a weekly strategy. Okay. This is different than a weekly strategy. And what I mean is the weekly strategy, all right, those are your pillars. Okay. Those are your pillars. Let me just see if I can do this here. So you guys, hopefully you can see this laser pointer, but these are my pillars up here. And if you can't for some reason see my laser pointer, please someone let me know. But these are my pillars up here in the top left, right? That's my weekly strategy. I think this was done not this past Monday, but the Monday before. Okay. So these 5 things are my weekly strategy. This yellow up here, these are my goals. Okay. But that's my strategy. This is the template that I create every week before the week starts. And what you'll notice is on the top, I have my week going from Saturday to Friday. Okay. I believe you start on Saturday, you end on Friday. That way, if you want to work on the weekends, you can, but it's to get ahead. It's not a negative thing, right? Because a lot of people will just push off hitting their pillars until the weekend, and then they actually won't hit them on the weekend and go, oh, I'll start up again on Monday. All right. So the way I plan my week, and look, you can copy this exactly. The videos go over this, the book goes over this, or you can use some version. So again, I have my goals here. I have my pillars here. Now, underneath my pillars, you'll notice I have this little squiggly line. And then what I list under there is, look, there's a lot of projects, proactive things, right? What we call the pro category that are not pillars, okay, that have to be done. And so any of those things that I want to get done that week, those go under my pillar. So for example, last Monday, which would have been about 10 business days ago, right? I knew that by the end of that week, I wanted to put together the slides for this presentation, right? And I knew that I would have to be proactive to do that. Okay. It wasn't a reactive thing. It was something I'd have to be proactive. So I have my pillars. I have any proactive activities I want to complete. And then anything that's highlighted in orange, by the way. Okay. Anything highlighted in orange, that simply means it has to be done by the end of the week or there's a consequence. All right. I'm going to come back to this middle column, this right column. All right. And again, the videos and the book go into detail, but this right column here, this is just my ongoing to-do list, both personal and professional. Now, for some of you, it looks a little short, right? Like, what are you talking about, Brian? I have 48 million things on my to-do list, right? I use a lot of reference documents for something like this. So for example, this SUSE4 here, that's just kind of like an acronym. Okay. So this SUSE4 here, that is something that has a reference document attached. So in order to complete that, I can go, there's a to-do list kind of on the reference document of all the things I need to do. All right. These things up here that were in orange, they had to be done by the end of the week where there was a consequence. Things in yellow have a deadline, and that's why I have a date after them. Okay. There's an associated deadline with them, and that's just my system. This middle column, and this is an 8x5. So this is a pretty large index card that I plan my week with. All right. This middle column, this is anytime I have an idea. If I read about something, learn about something, something pops into my head, I'm like, oh, I should try that, or maybe I should do this. I don't go down the rabbit hole because that's always a danger, right? Start going down the rabbit hole. Whatever you thought of last seems like the best idea, the most important. So all I do is scribble it on here. Now, this was on a Monday, right? Sometimes by the end of the week, this whole thing is filled up, and sometimes it's even, right? There's even stuff on the back. Okay. When I go to plan my week again, the following week, here's what happens in real life. 90% of this, I'm like, I'll never do that. Right. It seemed exciting at the time, whatever. I'm not going to do that. Okay. The stuff that does make it, it's amazing how a week later, the thing you thought was the most amazing thing isn't. But what I will do is anything that does survive the week, that goes, I transfer it to the appropriate reference document or wherever it has to go. And then I start off blank. Okay. So what I'm telling you here in terms of getting ready for next year and having that intentional business and having a great year is figure out what your weekly plan template is going to look like. Again, it can be exactly this, or it can just incorporate some of this, but what is the template that you're going to use, to plan your week? Okay. All right. The next thing you're going to do, let me turn off the laser pointer. Sorry. So the next, it's not letting me here. Okay. So the next thing you're going to do is you're going to create your daily plan template. Okay. Not your daily plan, but your daily plan template. All right. And so again, this is in the book. This is in the online course, right? I took a screenshot. I think this might've been last Tuesday. I could be off by a day, but this is literally how I and a lot of my most successful clients plan their days. I use a legal pad. I'm still a fan of kind of like low tech, high check, right? And here's how I break out my legal pad every day. This here on the left in the margin, okay, this is my calendar for the day. So I transfer it on paper. Each of these represents about an hour, right? When there's a space there. So I had an 11, I had an 11:30. There's then an hour break. I had a 1 p.m. for 60 minutes. This little dash here, that just means it's a half hour in between. I had a 2:30, I had a 3 p.m., another half hour break or 15 minutes in this case, and then a 3:45 for an hour, right? Now, you'll notice nothing before 11. We'll be talking about that here in a little bit. Now, on the right column, all right, on the right column, this is my personal to-do list. And why I keep my personal to-do list for that day, the things I want to get done that day, on my business stuff is because a lot of my personal to-do stuff, again, pops into my head, or maybe my wife texts me or something like that. And so what I wind up doing is I just want to get it out of my head. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole and say, oh, I can knock this out real quick and then go off in a different direction, right? So I just write it down here and then I can address it later in the day or on breaks. This middle column, all right, this middle column here, these are what I call tasks. And the way I define a task is pretty simple. Number one, either it takes, less than 5 minutes, 5 minutes. There's no exact science to it, but, I can knock it out in around 5 minutes or less, right? If I can knock it out quickly, it's a task. Or it might take longer. It could take 45 minutes, but it doesn't require much mental energy, right? Because I don't want to use up my best mental energy because that's my limiting resource. I don't want to use that up, okay, for activities that don't require it, all right? And so you'll also notice if something's in orange, again, that just means it has to be done by the end of the day or there's a consequence. All right. So obviously the thing I focus on first, right, when an orange one pops up is I want to knock out that one. Now, by the way, just so you know, this I start out with a list at the beginning of the day from my email, from the previous day, stuff that didn't get done, right, from my weekly to-do list if I want to move something on there and take care of it that day. But as the day goes on, I tend to add things, right? A call generates a task or a to-do thing, and I'll add it on there. If I've done it and it's over, I will cross it off like this. If for some reason I do my part, but I'm waiting to hear back from someone or it can't be crossed off, then I put a check mark with a circle. So this one, if you could read my scribble, says Mary reschedule. Well, I reached out to Mary. I sent Mary an email. Okay. I just haven't heard back from her yet. So I'm not crossing this off. It still has to be dealt with. I'm just waiting on Mary to get back to me. Now, when do I do these tasks? This is probably a more important thing to answer. I do these tasks in between like meetings. All right. Like if I have 16 minutes or 11 minutes and I don't want to start a new project, which we'll talk about here in a second. And so I'll be like, all right, I'll knock a few of these out. Right. The other time I do it is later in the day when my mental energy is low and I can no longer do really effective work. All right. In this left column, which we're about to talk about. So that I'll kind of batch and I'll do a bunch of these. Right. That's when I tend to address those things and do them in groups. All right. Let's talk about this left column, the most important column. These are what I call my priority projects. And these are the things that you need mental energy before. You need to be proactive to do them, right? In most cases, there's not a consequence. Once in a while, there is. And so these can be pillars. These can be your pillars, or these can be non-pillar things, right? So I simply ask myself, and I really do this every freaking day because I know that decision I make in the morning on what to work on first, second, third, that drives everything. Okay. I don't just want to be flippant about it. So I literally ask myself, hey, if I can only get one thing done today and then the sky caves in, right? My kids have to be picked up from school, they're sick, or my roof starts leaking, whatever, the million things can happen. Okay. My computer freezes, whatever. If I can only get one thing done today, what is it? And then everything's going to collapse. And I write it down. Okay. If I get that done, what's the second most important thing? What's the third? So on and so forth. And in my world, what I like to do is I like to write one extra thing. Like if I think in this case that day, I figured I could get two things done. So I wrote a third thing. Why'd I write a third thing? Because what if some of my appointments canceled and I wound up having more time than I thought? Or what if I was just quick on the other ones? I don't want to then do what most people do. Oh, someone rescheduled. I'll just check my email and look for instructions on what to do next. So I want to have something there, right? And my rule is very simple. It's no more complicated. Here is the rule. I do not start the second thing until I finish the first. End of story. If I'm having a horrible day and I'm getting interrupted 38 million times, which we'll talk about, you know what? It doesn't matter. I keep going back to number one. I keep going back to number one until it's done. And then I start the second thing. Look, planning your day is an open secret of success. You've heard it your entire professional lives. I can't stress it enough. When you do, let me put it this way, because the book and the videos will take care of this. When you do not plan your day, you actually give yourself way more work to do. Okay. It's as simple as that. All right. So you create your daily plan template. Let me turn that off. Okay. All right. Next thing you got to do, and you can do this now. You can do it December 31st. I don't care how you do it. You need to mold your calendar for the entire year. My calendar is molded forever. I mean, if I want to change it, whatever. What do I mean by mold my calendar? All right. This is a screenshot I took. It looks like it was on Monday. All right. This is a screenshot. So what I mean by mold my calendar is this. See this time here? I call it my pro time. All right. And this is just me. Okay. From 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock every day. All right. From 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock every day. That is my pro time. That is when I work on my proactive significant stuff, which you'll read about in the book or learn in the online course for the pillar system. This is the simple way to put it is this is when I work on my business, not in my business. Okay. Why do I call it molding your calendar? Because I have built a mold so that when you pour water in, all right, meaning when people, when I have to schedule meetings, schedule clients, schedule calls, whatever, I know they can't fit here. It's already molded out. This is the only space it can fit. Now, are there ever exceptions? Yes, true exceptions, right? And I've maybe done, maybe 4 or 5 of them to date so far this year, right? Where I've actually scheduled something during that time. Now, I'm not saying I'm never on the phone during that time if I'm the one making calls, right? But I don't schedule things during that time. I'm not saying you have to do it this way. You can do less hours. You can do like Tuesdays and Thursdays from whenever to whenever, but you've got to mold your calendar. You have got to have time. I think you should have time at the beginning of every day to do your most important work. Okay. My goal every day is to have a great day by 11 o'clock, right? By 11 o'clock, I don't care what happens. I'll put out any fires. If I wind up having to be on the phone all day, look, I don't want to be on the phone all day, but if I have to be on the phone all day, I will. But by 11 o'clock, I already had a great day. Okay. Now I can work in my business. Now I can talk to my clients. I can do my meetings. I can deliver, so to speak, right? So mold your calendar. Okay. Mold your calendar. And then let's see here. I'm sorry. This laser pointer's throwing me off here. All right. And then the last piece of this puzzle, okay, is monitoring. All right. Choosing what to monitor, because sometimes just sales, and again, depends on your industry. A lot of times those are lag indicators. Okay. Those are lag indicators. So you want to make sure you're monitoring things each week that are accurate indicators of your progress. For example, it could be like for some of my clients who are financial wholesalers, all right, it could be pace, meaning, they sell products to financial advisors. How many advisors are on pace to do this amount of money with them this year in that product, right? That happens to work in their field. But you want to find accurate indicators of progress, not lag indicators where you can do all the wrong things one week, but accounts show up, right? Or you can do all the right things one week and they don't. So you want to think about pace. You want to think about pillar execution, right? Am I executing on my pillar? So I'm monitoring my pace in this example. How many do I have on track for 500,000 or a million or whatever? Did I hit my pillars? Is a indicator of the healthier business, right? And then something I call a status sheet. All right. Something I call a status sheet. So what a status sheet is, and I've brought this in recent times to my clients, and I really like it, which is it's borderline a goal, but the way you look at it is you talk in the present tense, and it's about going next level. All right. And so what you say is basically, look, you guys all know there's another level to your game, and then there's another level after that. There's another level after that, right? You want to ask yourself, when these things are true, right? You're talking in the present tense. When 1, 2, and 3 are true, or 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are true, or 1 and 2 are true, whatever it is, I'm next level, right? So if you want to use a health example, it could be when I weigh X pounds, right? And right, I've stopped eating whatever, like I no longer eat this, I'm next level, right? And again, there's business versions of this. So just something to think about. And then the last thing is I want to just dip my toe into executing on this stuff, right? I'm really talking today about creating it for next year and getting everything ready and setting up your intentional business. But I just want to give you some execution tips that are kind of low-hanging fruit, if you will. One of them is batching. Okay. If you have clients and appointments in your business, you want to batch things. You don't want to have island meetings where, anytime you see white space and somebody wants a meeting or an appointment, you just go, yes, right? Oh, there's white space. I can do it. Because you wind up with island meetings and you wind up stopping and starting all day. Okay. Make sure you're batching similar tasks, right? You don't do laundry when you have, two dirty shirts, right? You don't run the dishwasher when you have 3 dirty mugs. You batch them. Okay. So try to hang your appointments around each other. And that way you have like times when you're on the phone, times when you're working on your business, right? You want to do similar things together. And I think rescheduling is underrated, right? If you have a meeting that's just kind of hanging out there and it's kind of breaking up a good period of time where you could be doing work, working on your business or whatever, getting stuff done, it's okay to reach out to someone and say, hey, I know we have an appointment this Thursday at 3 o'clock, and I'm still able to make that. However, if you have flexibility, right, it would really help if we could do something earlier or something to that effect. I might have mashed up those words, but basically saying, look, I can still honor the appointment, but if you have flexibility, would you be able to do it a little earlier or at any of these times? And you'd be surprised how many times people can do that, right? So it's definitely worth asking. Next thing, a timer. The number one productivity tool on the planet, bar none. A good old-fashioned kitchen timer, big digital numbers, big buttons, not your phone. Okay. Look, we overestimate what we can do in a day. We overestimate what we can do in a week by a long shot. We underestimate what we can get done in a focused 30 minutes. Okay. Or a focused hour. So when you want to get things done, right? You decide what you want to get done. You put, you turn everything off. We'll talk about that here in a second. You set your timer on 30 minutes or 40 minutes or 60, whatever the number is, and you just get after it. And it's amazing. You'll start working on something, think you've been working on it forever, look up and realize I've been working on this for 13 minutes, right? It is amazing what you can get done in a focused 30 minutes. Okay. Timers are great, especially when you're all over the place and you're like, okay, slow down. I got to get something done. Put on the timer, put everything else on airplane mode, which brings up my next thing, airplane mode. Okay. You have to operate at certain times of the day in airplane mode, right? Your email but first of all, your email notification should always be off. Always. There is no actual reason to have email notifications. Okay. Here's the only email notification you will need for the rest of your career. You ready? Here it is. You have email. I promise you, you have email now, you have email later, you have email tonight when you're sleeping, you have email this weekend, you have email on Monday, you have email on Tuesday. You always have email. You no longer need to know that you have email. All right. You should check your email. You decide when to check it, but you should not. The last thing you need is notifications constantly taking you down that rabbit hole, right? Giving you that dopamine drip of, ooh, an email, I could stop focusing. So your phone should be on do not disturb, okay? And by the way, people say, oh, Brian, I have a kid in school. I need to know if they call. Great. You can set up do not disturb so certain emergency numbers or certain important numbers get through, but your phone should be on airplane mode. And if you need email to execute on something like a pillar, like you're sending out emails or something like that, turn your Outlook or whatever program you're using, turn it on offline mode. Write your emails, send them, do it all at once, and then go back online and it'll send them all. The last thing you need is emails coming in as you're trying to accomplish something. All right. So get into airplane mode. If then rules. Okay. When it comes to protecting your pro time, if then rules. Very, very simply, if you have to give up your pro time, right? Like if you have to, you need to do, it's an exception. It has to be done. I have to give up my 9 to 10 or something one day. Then I add an hour somewhere else in the week, right? If I lose an hour, then I add an hour, right? Just have some real simple if then rules, right? You can have if then rules for travel. If I'm on business travel, then this in my hotel room counts as a workout or something like that, right? If then rules. Set up your environment to win. I'll just push you off to a book, okay? And that book is Willpower Doesn't Work by Benjamin Hardy. And the book is all about this exact thing. How do you set up your environment before the game starts? Set it up ahead of time to win, right? It's kind of like the equivalent if you've ever tried to not eat certain crap. The basic concept is, well, don't have it in your house. If something's hard to get to, if there's friction, you're less likely to do it. The easier you make it, the easier it is to do it. So set up your environment to win. And then I'll go back to it one more time. Plan your day, plan your day, plan your freaking day. Okay. Plan your day. All right. Let me go through the checklist again, just so you kind of see where we've been. Determine your goals. Create your weekly strategy. Create your reference documents. Create your weekly plan template. create your daily plan template, mold your calendar, and then decide what to monitor. All right. Again, here are the resources again. I think you guys most know them: productivitygiant.com, my email, and of course the online course, which I'm going to show you how to access here in a little bit.